Greetings. I would like to welcome all of you back to the fifth episode of Power BI Desktop for busy students. For today, we're going to cover visualization in more details. So right now, we have the visualization file that we have done from the last episode. We have a table and we have a very simple pie graph. Now let's go look at this pie graph in more details. If you want to look at any of these charts in more detail, you can notice we have what we call is the focus mode. You can click on the focus mode to actually zoom into the chart and see what is it like. If you look over here, you can notice this is basically the chart of the student IDs that we have by the major. Now when we look at this, we have seen the major that we have is sorted by the number of students who have taken this exam. Now, in some cases, we may not like what we are seeing over here. In the visualization we have done, we can actually change the formatted details in many ways. One of the first things that could be very useful is to select how are we going to sort the data that we are going to show. Right now, it is sorted by the majors with the most amount of students. One of the things that you can do is you can go to the More options. And when you select, you can choose which of the data fields that you have used in the graph that you want to use for the sorting details. So right now we have set at student ID. We can change this to the major. Once we have sorted by the major, you can notice that we can see in the legend the major sorted from the large to smaller. Let's change it to ascending order. We can notice this graph will represent basically the pie graph from the majors from the smallest to the largest one. We can also notice that when we have all of these details, there are a lot of other details that we can do. Some of you might say, I don't like the title. Some of you would say, I don't like what we're showing over here. For each of them, we have the label. I don't like the label like the number and the percentage. Maybe we want to change it in more details. Like in the last episode, we can notice that if we look at Power BI, we have the fields over here and we have the format. The format over here will allow you to change the graph and format in a different way. Let's click in format. And we can notice the first thing that we might want to change is student ID by major. Let's change this from the field name of student ID to students who have taken the exam by major. This is easy to do when we click on the title tab over here. We can click on the title text over here and change the setting. Student taking the exam by the major. Once we have it, we can notice that the title has been updated by the value we have placed inside. We can also notice over here, above the title, we have the detail label. Over here, we can choose how do we want to display the labels over here. What is the style? Right now, it is data value and percentage of the total. You can change it like all the details. So we can notice we have the major, the numbers, and the percentage. You can change it to things like category and basically the percentage of that category to the whole contribution. We can change to category, to the data value. This is up to what you want to show. So I'm going to change this to category and the percent of total. We can now notice that Power BI offers many interesting visualization formatting options that you can change around to make your visualization stand out and communicate the data in a better way. Now let's go back to our report. We can notice that we have two visualization charts over here. Let's add one more. Right now, we're going to look at another chart. I am going to use basically a bar chart over here. Okay, so I'm going to choose this one over here. Oops, not over here. Okay, I'm going to click outside first, and I'm going to click over here on the clustered bar chart. In this bar chart, I want to show the average percentage of the students in every single major. Instead of showing the students taking the exam by the major, we are going to now look at the average percent of every major. In order to do that, we have to select the major. The major, we have to select the percent of the exam that we have calculated earlier. We now notice that once we have put this down, the data seems to be a little bit strange. For the major in the axis, we show the values, which is the percent exam. We now notice that it is now from 0 up to 5,000%. This is not what you want. As we have covered earlier, we can notice any field that are numbers. When you put them into the chart, usually it would be sum together. So if you click over here in the percent exam, you can notice that it has been placed as the sum. We don't want it to be the sum. I want to find the average percentage of the students in each major, how well they did in the exam on an average perspective. So we have to change from sum down to average. And now you can notice that the percentage will now be scaled from 0 to 100. Let's zoom in and we can notice from 0 to, okay, over here at the end, 100. Now this is becoming a lot better. Let's go back and change this graph a little bit. We can notice it says average of percent exam by major. This seems okay, so I'm not going to change the title, but it is recommended if you can change the title to what you like. Okay. Once we have this, we are going to go and find the data labels. After we click on the format, we're going to go back to the data labels. I always like to add the data labels so it's actually easy to see the values of each of them. Once we have this, one another thing that a lot of people like to do, if we see over here, this is sorted by the average percent. Sometimes, instead of having only the bars, we want to make our chart easier to observe by using colors. You can actually use colors to very good effect in your charts. So I'm going to show another option over here, which is both data labels. It is basically the data color options. Let's click over here on data color options to expand them. We will now notice that the default color is blue. You can change it to any color you like. The issue with this is that it would change all of them to the same color. If you don't want to change them to the same color, there is a very quick nifty trick that you can do. You can play with the FX. The FX over here allows you to play a little bit with the FX. I'm going to click on FX over here. And you can notice that we are now given the option in which we can choose how we are going to format the colors in our chart. So over here, we have format by the color scales. You can see many other options, but I will only work with color scale for right now. We have color scale, rules, and field values, but we're going to work with color scale. And we can choose how are we going to change the color scale. Right now, I probably want the major with the highest average to have one color, and then the major with the lowest score with another color. How can I do something like this? How can I do something like this? We can notice you have to go and look at the second row of this menu. And you can find over here that we have based on the field. So over here, we can say the percent of the exam the students have. Okay. Instead of selecting sum, we are going to change it to average. Average. as we are now showing the average of each major. The next thing that we have to do is to choose the color scale. What color do you want to show? If it is the lowest value, you can enter a value or select one that you like. So I'm going to select basically a form of red, and the highest value I'm going to change it, okay, to a different color, a little bit more blue. Once we have this and everything is set, you can press OK. Now you can see that in your charts that you have over here, the highest mark is 84, the lowest is 51, and we scale the color up. This makes it easier to interpret the graph we have. Another thing that you might want to add to this one is that for our axis, we can notice over here it is 0 to 80%. Now when you create any type of graph, it will automatically set the value for the x and the y axis. Let's look at the x-axis over here. We can see that in the x-axis, it is a scale of linear in which the start and the end values are auto based on the data you have. Now, if you're going to use any percentage value, the value would be from 0 to 100%. 100% is the same as 1. So if you want to make sure this chart is looking perfect in every single scenario and data you have, you should also change the start value and the ending value to 0 and 1. And now you can notice that the charts that we have is now better scale. So this one, we are sorting them by the average score, accounting at number 1. And we can notice at the bottom, we have IML. Once we are done with this, we can notice our charts are looking much better. The visualizations we have in our Power BI page over here is looking much more interesting. Now, once we have all of this data, if you have more than one charts, one of the nifty things that you can do is you can actually drill down on your data a little bit more. Suppose you're looking at MAS. You want to know more about MAS. You can notice that when I click on MAS, all of the other charts are going to have their values change based on the options I have selected. MAS, the average is 62. We have only 6.25%, or 21 of all the students we have. And we can notice these are the students' ID in the MAS major and how much time they have taken and what is the score in the exam. You can use Control and you can click an additional field to add more that you want to explore in more detail. I have selected MAS, MGT, and non-major, and you will see that in the charts that we have in this page, we are also looking into these in more detail. So if you want to remove everything, if you have selected major and you don't want it anymore, click somewhere else on the chart that doesn't hit any of the categories, and the chart will be resetted to normal. So in today's episode, we have seen a little bit more about visualization in more details. We have seen the ability to select the categories we want to use and sort. We have seen the example in which we have gone inside each of the charts and done modifications such as the data labels and the scales, which are going to be used quite often. So in the session today, this is all we have for this episode. Thank you very much for your time, and we will see each other again soon in the next episode.